Inspiration Nation, hello, Lee Kemp here for another week on the podcast, here with both Joe and Ryan. How are we doing, guys?
Yeah, good, thank you.
All good, thank you.
That's what I like to hear. Have we had exciting weeks?
Oh, yeah. So exciting, man.
That sounded
That
so
didn't sound
fake.
too sincere.
Yeah.
I've loved my week. I've done many happy activities.
Yes. No, it's been good. It's been good, to be fair. It's been good. Lots of stuff happening. Video-wise, lots of busy stuff going on. Not busy, productive stuff, when I say not busy.
There we go. That went up last week. We got a few comments from people about that being their favourite quote.
Yeah, I saw that. Red
Always
Majid, wasn't
makes
it?
me happy.
Red Majid? Yeah, Red
Yes.
Majid was loving that, wasn't he?
Always a good supporter. We thank you.
Yeah.
And obviously we spoke about it, and avid podcast listeners will know we've done a little bit of a tweak on the branding I did last weekend. I was quite pleased with the outcome on that, so that's been the highlight of my week so far.
Yeah, I think so. People should
Sounds
check
quite
it
sad
out.
when I say that out loud, but it has been.
No, people should check it out. Give some feedback on the new logo, I reckon.
You can see that logo at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Listen to IN, Listen TOIN. Joe is at JN Coaching Tech across all those platforms, plus TikTok as well. Who won't like it if I forget to mention TikTok?
Yeah.
And we are on YouTube as well, the Inspiration Nation podcast.
Oh, I forgot to say, I'm on Snapchat as well.
Look, you are on everything now, Joe.
I'm still on Twitch yet. That's the last one. Twitter's got to because Twitter's got to be one of the things we've got to do. We've got to come up with a gaming thing, like we mentioned last week about the squad.
Yes.
I have to get something going with that.
Need to get you some practice time in first, Joe.
Yeah,
And
I'll
you.
have to do that one on.
So, as we're now rambling, what are we talking about this week, Joe?
Okay, so this one is one which the lovely Ryan come up with, suggested. Pardon me, and I got a little cheeky text off the lovely Ryan, our technical guru, and he was saying that, Joe, I think we should talk about these particular subjects. So I've picked the subject for Ryan. It's knowing how to say the right thing. So we are going to talk about that. So from my point of view, I'm going to, this week, when I look back at the podcast last week, I did so much talking. It was ridiculous. So I'm going to let you guys talk about this one a bit more this week. But what I'm going to do is
Is this a way of saying you've not done any prep notes?
Oh no, I've got the usual. No. But I literally must have hogged the air. I must have been 80%. And when I've gone back and looked at videos, I'm thinking, oh, I'm doing loads of talking.
That's what people are here for, Joe. They're here for the Joe.
And for the Ryan and for the Lee. It's the Inspiration Nation podcast with all three of us. Anyway, I'm just going to put out there. So knowing how to say the right thing. So this for me, or from my point of view, is I'm going to just say one thing. I'm going to just throw it out there is knowing your audience or knowing who you're going to say whatever you're saying to, knowing them in a way that when you say it, you can imagine you being them and knowing what they're about, what their values are and things like that. So that's where I would go with that, about knowing how to say the right things. Do you know them? What do you know about them, etc. And then you can craft your message to it, whatever you want to say, whether it's something difficult, whether it's something sensitive. There's lots of different things we can. Now I've got tons of ideas on these, but I'm gonna just roll this back a little bit because I'm conscious that I do take a lot of airtime. Sorry, my cat wants to get into the kitchen. Hang on. So I'm going to let you talk now. What do you think about that, guys?
Ryan, this was a nugget from your brain. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think you actually inspired it, from what I remember rightly. I thought that and I still think that, I think that you always, in a professional capacity, because obviously we work together, seem to say the right thing every time or all the time, or know the right message to portray. And I think that's an important trait to have. And yes, it comes with knowing your audience, but also it comes with experience as well, I guess. And it was just like, how many times have you had to fail to get that right, if ever, or is it just something that you just kind of switch on and know?
So the important thing in this interview of Lee Kemp's brain is that nothing ever comes from doing it right the first time. So there's been a lot of, and not even just a lot of failures and then something clicked and suddenly it's right all the time, because it's an ever learning thing. And I think I'm communication is something that in the workplace I am conscious about. And I will just say there's something that I'm quite pleased about, Ryan, that you've noticed that, because it is something that I think it's a trait that I work on a lot. And if anyone ever if I'm mentoring people or leading people or people just asking me questions around key skills, I always talk about the importance of communication as a number one thing on that. But it's a like everything is, it's a learnt skill, and it's always developing, it's always changing. And I don't know which rambly direction I'm going to go on this. So starting off with, one of my favourite things. Hold on, I'm going to disappear off camera for a second to grab a book off my bookshelf.
Oh, this is a book. If I think it's the book I think it is, that somebody else has told me to read as well.
Right, so I'm holding it up. So which book is it? Because people will see this on the screen.
It's the neuro-linguistic programming book, is it? Not pro. I don't think it's program, is it? But it's the NLP book.
It is neuro,
Yeah,
and specifically, and the most important bit, and why I read it is neuro-linguistic programming for dummies.
Yeah, nice.
And I have not, and I'll flick it open here, I have not read this book start to finish, but I've read lots of it, and I read bits of it, and I use it as a reference guide. I've probably not done it for a few years now, actually, but I used to use it quite a lot when I was newer and developing. And I say I'm not big on any one mantra for things, but there's a lot of stuff in there that I take stock in. And one of the things they talk about, just chuck it out of the way there, is what they call third-person perspective to do a communication. And they say that whenever you're planning or preparing a conversation, you need to look at it from three perspectives. There's your perspective. There is the perspective of the person or people's receiving a communication. And the third perspective is an independent person who, doesn't have either of those people's own perceptions. And would that independent person understand the message as well as the others? And if you can be confident that all three of them understand the message, then you've probably got the communication across right.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
And it starts off, and I always say it relates to any, so that could be an individual conversation. It could be you delivering a message to a room full of people. It could be you sending an email. It could be you preparing a video. It could be something you're writing in a document that then gets stuck up, we'd say in work, on the internet for people to rely on. And it's all about the message that people understand from it.
Yeah.
And it does come from very hard trial and error. And the number one lesson that comes with all of it is less is more.
Okay.
Because the more you've got to always, and it goes with everything, is keep it simple. And I think that's the case for everything, but especially in communication, because if if I'm explaining something to you or I'm explaining something to Joe individually, I can read what you're saying, can tailor it exactly to you. It can be a very specific conversation. If I'm explaining it to the two of you, I need to be mindful that both of you will interpret what I'm saying in different ways based on your own perspective, and got to be conscious that the message meets what both of you perceive. So almost the less I'm saying, the easier it is to do that. If you're doing that to, as we do in work, Ryan, to 200 people, you've got that thing of people going off in different directions, even more so, which is why you have to be very deliberate and very clear. And most of it does come from that fault thing, and still does now, and not from big horrendous, oh no, that went wrong, but just not everyone will always get the message. And the more you see people not getting the message, the more you kind of build up your toolbox of how you tailor your message next time to make sure you don't fall into that position as well.
Yeah.
Would that all make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely.
I call the people thing, I've not used this for ages now, I call it my Men in Black theory.
Right.
I was waiting for, and what does that mean, Lee?
What does that mean, Lee?
The film Men in Black, and I never get this quote wrong. I paraphrase it because I have a terrible memory. Joe tells me I don't. I just remember the important things, but I don't remember this quote I use all the time. But there's a scene in Men in Black where Will Smith is talking to Tommy Lee Jones, and he says, "Why can't we just tell people about the aliens?" He says, "People are smart. We can tell them. They'll understand." And Tommy Lee Jones stops him and he says, "A person is smart. If you explained it to one person rationally, they would get it. People as a group," and I said, this isn't what he says, but he says, "are stupid, panicky morons, and will panic and it'll be chaos."
Yeah.
And whilst I don't think people are stupid, panicky morons, it's the same thing that if you're giving the same message to 200 people, the various ways they'll react to it will be all over the place, which is, again, why over the years I've become very, very deliberate in my communication.
Yeah. And I think that does come across from a recipient point of view. In the position that I'm in, I don't often disclose information or communications to 200 people, but I receive them quite regularly. And I think that's, as I say, I don't think there's been a time where you've said something to me or you said something to a group of people that's included me that I think I've misunderstood it or I've misconstrued what you were saying or thinking. And I think that goes to show that obviously that what you do is successful and is beneficial to the people around you and the people that you kind of have strived to learn that for.
That's good to hear. Because as I say, that's the intention. It is, and it's such an important skill. Communication isn't just talking to people; it's what you do and how you do it, and there is a strategy behind it. And like everything else, it gets quicker. So at the start, and reference looking at the book, I'd have to put a lot of thought and a lot of planning into it. But the more you do it, the more instinctive and the more natural it becomes. And I think you likened when we talked about this the other week, Ryan, as an idea. Because obviously internally in our, I say obviously, no one else knows but you and me, internally in our work, we make vlogs every so often and put them out. And you kind of referenced that when people are talking about ideas, you can see how kind of thoughtful and deliberate I am with what that message is and whether it actually delivers the message we think it does or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, it's just in that environment, it plays in that way as well, because ultimately, if it doesn't deliver that message, then you just fail completely.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Joe, you talked about knowing your audience.
Yeah.
Which I think it's absolutely key to. And in fact, it's funny. I was having a conversation with someone today in the office on this very subject about communication to an audience and different styles for different people, the approaches and everything. So it's quite fresh in my mind because it was about 6 hours ago now. And I think there's a great skill you can do is once you know people, like with my example of you two guys, because I know a lot about you, it helps me tailor the message to, what your style is, what you react well to, what you don't, what I know, and what I know I need to explain to you, which is really important. But also sometimes you don't know your audience because it just might be a group of people you don't interact with much or have never interacted with before. And I think that's where there's a real skill in kind of reading the room as well and what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I do this, again, just for my insight on it and stuff I've learned over the years, is I generally don't prep very much for presentations and stuff like that. There's been occasions, Joe, you'll remember you helped me agonizingly cut 45 minutes down to 15 minutes for a presentation I did years ago.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And that was a strict time limit. There's work to be done, and there's a time and a place to do that. And we really agonise over what bits give the message and what don't. But then Ryan, like when you did one the other day, and we were talking about what to do, and I said I much prefer just knowing where I'm going and leading the way there.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And I normally will go in with I know what message I've got to deliver, and I will effectively read the eyes of everyone in the room, and throw out questions, test the reaction. And will kind of move around the subject until I'm comfortable that I can see that everyone, the majority of people in the room, have got whatever that message is that I need them to get. And being very, very focused on that because, if they haven't got that message, then you haven't delivered what you wanted to do. But also, I think people try and do too much at once. And if you're not trying to stay focused on delivering one message and you try and squeeze in 10 things, people end up leaving with nothing because it's just too much to take in. Which I think, again, is a very deliberate form of communication on sticking to your message and, again, understanding what people need to take away. And I even, back to the written thing, I use that skill in there because ultimately when I'm writing something, the start of that is what is the message they need to know and then kind of building it around that.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense.
I think that's the end of my initial lecture into the communication style of Lee.
That's good. I like that.
I mean, because like I said, Ryan, you talked about this is your kind of idea of stuff, and you, like I said, it was inspired by coming from seeing stuff I've done in work. I mean, Does that give you any more insight on that? Does that fit with what you've seen? Does it sound like I'm just talking absolute nonsense to justify something that happens by accident?
Yes. No, I'm
Good.
joking. I'm joking. I mean, it definitely gives me an understanding of why what you do is so successful, especially because you essentially proofread your communication before you kind of give it. Unless obviously it's off the cuff and in a chat format, then that's probably slightly different. But those written communications or those planned communications, like the videos you mentioned we do at work, can kind of be rehearsed, if you like, and kind of proofread, but until you're happy that they're going to be the way that they go out. How do you think that specifically differs to maybe face-to-face communication and maybe delivering messages in meetings, for example, or in chats with people that maybe you mentor or look after?
Both of those situations, I think, have a significant advantage and a significant disadvantage. So from the video thing, I'd like in video will be the same as emails or team briefs, or to an extent presentations when they're heavily prepped, in that you have that rehearsal time. Like you said, you can almost pre-edit what you're doing, and in
Yeah.
some cases post-edit what you're doing as well to make sure you're there. So you've got that preparation piece to it. What you haven't got is the ability to read the reaction.
Right.
So
Okay.
you've got to be confident that's delivering the right message. And if it doesn't, you're kind of past the point of no return and you can't do anything about it. Which is why I always like, whenever there's something written, is to explain, and it will cascade down. I will explain to various managers what it's about. They will explain down the line, and hopefully it picks up that then that gets picked up at some point down the line so that someone is testing the reaction. But
Yeah.
really the disadvantage in that stuff is once it's in the can, so to speak, it is, and you've got to stick with it. The advantage of then being in a room, one-on-one or in a group or anything else, is you can test reaction and you can tailor the message and you can repeat stuff and you can clarify stuff and you can question stuff. So you can really make sure it's got that message through. But what you haven't got is that preparation time. So sometimes stuff is a bit off the cuff.
Yes.
But again, it's where practice comes in, because both of those disadvantages can be negated just through practicing your skill and practicing your art. Because again, I got to this, doing it for years, I'm quite comfortable and I'm kind of, pleased from your kind of feedback that it is the case that when it is talking about stuff that actually I'm quite good at getting that message across, and I can go through that thought process very quickly, just because, like everything else, it becomes quicker the more you do it. And the same with the written stuff. The more you do it and the more you see how the outcome went, the more you again get develop an art of how well you do and don't put those documents together.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they're kind of the differences between those two things. And I said, and it's like everything, there's pros to both, but I think the framework that sits behind both those situations is the same logic, or certainly that's how it sits in my brain.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel as though I've got an insight into how you deliver messages well and how you can kind of tailor them to the audiences. So thank you for sharing the secret.
Also saying thank you for sharing the secret. If someone gives me an in to talk about this stuff, you can't shut me up. Oh, do you know what? I've just looked up. I was just looking in the book. People have seen me ruffling through if they're watching on YouTube for the third person perspective. And I found the page, and not the page, but it's actually folded down in the book, where obviously I wanted to come back to it to remember it again. Looking in the NLP meta mirror is what they call it.
Nice.
And it says
Nice.
the meta mirror helps you prepare for or review a number of possible scenarios. And scenarios are difficult conversation. Oh, it's got specific difficult conversations with a teenager or family member, so face to face, presentations at work, meetings with your bank manager, one-on-one, contract negotiations, one-on-one, sensitive discussions with a partner or friend, ways relating to your boss or colleague at work, and methods of dealing with difficult clients. So again, that this stuff does come from somewhere that's backed up by written words, that it is true. Sometimes I have to check that I don't just make this stuff up in my head.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But it all works. Right, I'm going to put the book away then and not read it because we're doing a podcast. So, Mr. Neuer, what's your take on saying the right thing?
I like everything you said. I think it's quite scientific the way that you said it. From my own point of view, and the way I do my training, so doing it every day and things like that. For me, it's been just being authentic and being me, and coming from a place of intention when I put my messages across. So, you know, when I do that training, when I do that thing, is having my intention to help people, because I do training and coaching, and so reading those people and where they are, like even today, I was delivering a session today, and creating how you create trust in the room and rapport and all that sort of thing, how you have small talk before the session and things like how you build all that rapport and things like that, and people then revealing some really, really sensitive things, and I can't obviously say because we're on the podcast, but like I was so shocked today that someone revealed something in front of three, it's only a small group of 4 people, but someone revealed something quite personal to them, and that's when I can sort of see how the message of trust and help gets across. So I'm less scientific and more about the feeling in the room. And
I don't.
Go on. Lee, you still there? Have you disappeared?
No.
Has he gone?
Lee,
Lee,
going so well, Lee.
Lee, what have you done? Oh, right, what are we going to do?
Let's just pretend that he's still here.
Okay. So, Lee, you were
What
saying...
have I done? Can you not hear me?
Oh no, you're back now. You're back now.
What happened?
I don't know. You were
just
just
went
about to
quiet.
say something.
Oh, do you know what? That was the most profound thing I've ever said in my life. But
Oh, he's gone again.
Is he gone again?
It sounds
What?
like it might be his internet because it.
Do you think
cut
he's dropping
away.
out? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it did that little sort of metallic sound
Yeah.
thing, didn't it? Oh, Lee. Go on, Ryan. So while we're waiting for Lee to come back, yeah, I think Lee was going to say, well, I think he was going to say something like, I'm not all scientific. I read the room and things like that. I think that's what he was going to say. I'm sure he was going to say something like that.
that is what I was going to say. Am I
Oh,
back?
he's there.
Am I back?
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
he's
back
there, he's
now.
there, he's
Right.
there.
I'm not going to move or do anything different than I have done before.
We think it might be your internet.
I was trying to look up funny memes to send to you guys in the background, and I think that might have killed my internet. So I'm not going to do that anymore.
Is that
Obviously, I
what it
don't
is?
just look up funny memes to make you laugh when we're recording the podcast.
Lee using his 2004 internet provider.
You know,
I'm not
Lee,
very-
you're not meant to multitask. You know that shortens your bandwidth.
Do you know what, Joe? Every time I hear someone talk about multitasking, that thing you said about multitasking sticks in my head, and you're absolutely right. We're not made for it as people. I've just demonstrated that fact. Right.
Practically.
So I was saying what you think I was going to say because I could hear you perfectly.
Okay.
Because I think my thing a lot is about reading the room, but with a method. And actually, what you said there and what you do sounded like a method to me in the same way as well. There's a lot of logic that backs up what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's, like we talk about with your interpretation of the world, I think I see a bit more of the structure, whereas you see a bit more of the, the outcome with the people bit. But I think we're almost doing the identical same thing.
Yeah. Just a different approach, a slightly different approach, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've looked a little bit at NLP and stuff like that, but I tend to go with what the feeling is. It's really weird. I don't know. It's the feeling I pick up in the room.
Yeah.
And it's really weird. I can't really explain it. It's really strange. Because even today, when I was saying something, I felt chills. Like even last week, I felt chills. Or there's like a feeling I get, and you get this sort of sense of emotion in the room. Like it's like really, it's like the energy thing we talked about in podcasts way back. You just feel that energy in the room. And even one of the people in the room today said, I feel that. There's like a sense of real, eyes watering sense that, not, as in quite emotional, which is quite a rare thing to happen. But with small groups, it tends to happen more because people get more, closer because it's smaller. But yeah, that was quite interesting actually when that was being said. So it is. So Ryan's initial question around, know how to say the right thing. You're not always going to say the right thing. And Lee, you're right when you said
that's
about
really important message.
Yeah, you're right, Lee. you learn by experience. And even about 6 months ago, I said something in the room, and someone said, oh, what was the word they said? They said, because I explained to my group, because I was doing a session on, I'm doing a delivery accreditation at the moment, so I'm training people how to train at the moment. It was something I said, and this reaction was really interesting, because the rest of them was fine, but this one person said, I'll come back to me in a minute, but it was something, it's gone. But it's something around,
In my head, it's just calling you a swear word, by the way, Joe.
Oh, really? It was. Oh, what was it? Oh, what was it? Oh, that sounds very patronising. That was it.
Oh, really?
That's patronising, yeah. And it was really interesting, because a lot of the other group, when the feedback came back, it was interesting that the group went to talk to the leader and said, God, this person was quite rude to Joe. That's how it came across. So they thought, but it was just, and I said to them, it's not necessarily they were rude, it's just they had a different value system. And it's obviously something I said touched something. And so I did follow up with them and said, what was it? How was you? And they said, I was fine. But what it was they were feeling a bit anxious. And there's anxiety because they were quite nervous about coming into the room. So I think there's a bit of that in it as well. And their reaction was to sort of, I suppose, fight back to anything, or very sensitive what I was saying. It was really interesting to see that a lot of the room was fine, but this one person really found it difficult. And I've really learned another thing to sort of know to say the right things is sometimes you have to detach from the outcomes sometimes, because you're not going to please everybody all the time. It's impossible.
Absolutely right, yeah.
So you have got to say what you've got to say, and you have to accept that some people aren't going to want to hear the message, going to understand the message, or don't even hear your message. But so long as the majority get it, that's what you want to be hitting. If the rest of the room is not getting it, or the most of the room isn't getting it, then there is something drastic wrong, but you'll soon get it. But for me, it's just being very honest with your audience, being authentic with your audience, really knowing yourself, and actually being honest and open about where you are. And I think that goes a long way with building trust. And when you do that, people will listen to you much more. And that's my view on that.
I'm going to take this natural segue to talk about JN Coaching Tech, the website. Stick JN Coaching Tech into your Google machine. Takes you to Joe's website, full of lots of fantastic resources, reading material, supported stuff, very much in the vein of what we're talking about today. Links to Joe's daily videos. What number are we on today, Joe?
Oh, it's 470 today.
My God, we're marching towards 500 now. I remember we were marching towards 300.
That's crazy. It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. I've filled up so many books now. I'm getting to the end of my journal, so I'm getting towards the end of another journal now. Really, this year has been crazy. Like, I've been getting through journals like mental, crazy amounts.
That's really good. So links to the videos are on there. And you can contact Joe through the website if you're interested in engaging Joe's coaching services. That is JN Coaching Technologies.
Nice one, Lee. Very good. So, Ryan, what do you think of all this? What's your overview of this?
As in generally, or now we've had Lee's?
Now we've had Lee's chat. What's your now view? What's your about? Because you raised this subject. So, what are you finding?
That the communication connoisseur has taught us his magic, basically. I think that I think for me it's important to always try and display the right message. I think that's important in any kind of leadership role at any level, is delivering the best message you can to the team, or on the opposite side to the upwards line to get the right message across. And I think obviously having that experience and delivering it in the right way can only be positive to you and the audience. So knowing how to do it right is important. And I think learning from the people I have around me specifically, but also I'm sure the listeners would like to draw in on that as well. But drawing in on, but getting the information or drawing in on the information that other people provide that are generally quite successful kind of in their lives is an important or a good way of seeing how other people do it and finding different techniques to display communications. And I think that having such an open conversation about it has kind of led us to getting that with Lee here.
Definitely agree. Yeah, definitely agree.
And I think the most important bit in what you said there, Ryan, kind of from your view on this, is about, delivering the best. You said delivering the best message team, or the best message up the line, or whoever you're talking to, and that's, like Joe says, with the intentions. That's ultimately the aim. Whatever the method is, whatever way you look at it, however you measure the success, it's all about that intention of making sure you're delivering a good message. And as long as you're conscious that it's your responsibility to make sure you are delivering that message, I think you're always going to be aware of what your skills are and developing them and finding your own style. And like you said, there's a lot of people around you, and everyone listening will have that as well. People they see who are good communicators, people they see who are bad communicators, and being able to take all of that on board, learn the lessons, from their own experience, plus what they see from other people, and pick the bits you like from what people do and integrate them with your own style. Because there's no one way of doing this. There's no kind of cookie cutter approach. It's whatever works for you and gets the outcomes, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's important to find as early as you can. I say this in the first person term, but your way of doing it, I guess, your way of finding the best way to get the information across.
Yeah, because it's got to be like Joel says, it's got to be authentic. So there are skills and there's techniques and there's things you can learn from other people, but it's got to resonate with who you are so that it then resonates with other people.
Yeah, it's got to be genuine. Otherwise, yeah, as you say, otherwise people just won't believe it, will they?
No. I just like to ramble, so that's why my style works quite well with me. Ramble on until I get there. But that there is part of it as well. I think there's a very important. It's kind of moving out into wider communication styles and just the words you say. But I think there's a very important part in the message about making people feel relaxed.
Yeah.
So if I'm in a room, I will often, and you'll know this, I'll use self-deprecating a lot just because it relaxes the atmosphere. It gets things off on the right track. I do silly little things, like I'm very deliberate that I will never sit in what can be perceived as a head of a table position, because I think as soon as you set that authoritative tone, you're kind of working in an opposite direction than what Joe was talking about earlier with the trust thing.
Yeah.
So I will always sit in not an odd position, but a deliberately kind of
offset.
Yeah, so if there's three people on each side of the table, I won't be in the middle. I'll be on the left and right position of it, or something like that. The other day, I got people to move around just so I couldn't sit at the head of the table. I suppose the fact I got people to move then contradicts everything I'm saying, doesn't it? Really? But I explained why, and I said in the room I don't like to sit at the head of the table because I think it sets the wrong tone. And in fact, the fact everyone had left the head of the table for me was something I wanted to dispel quite quickly. And I think all of that is part of the style as well. And it's the same. It's just that whole kind of clear English, don't use too much jargon, don't use it as a kind of a platform to show people how knowledgeable about stuff, because that's just going to put people off.
I would totally agree with that.
Taking it too far off track there.
I like it. I like it a lot, actually. Because I was actually thinking about the intention bit you're talking about, and I came over. I come up with some negatives and positives in that regard.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of intentions which will go down a real. Even if you're trying to ask it, negative things, and I don't know what you think about that. If you're giving the message, your intention is to manipulate people, people will pick it up.
Oh, absolutely, they will.
If you're trying to sort of be so clever or so intelligent, and try, I'm so clever, you're trying to, if I do this, I'm going to be able to shape their behaviour by saying this, then you're on the loser already. So if you're trying to manipulate, that's definitely one of the ones there. Also, coercing people is another one that you're using. I think even like you, Lee, not sit in that position of power or perceived position of power, and actually sitting with people and having almost like a flat structure. So you're opening up the conversation for people to be able to be honest with you and be able to be safe in the
knowledge. That's absolutely
with you. That's really important. So coercion, and also, people not using fear to drive a conversation or to drive a message, because people will take the message, but they'll think they can't respond to you, and they're gonna, if they feel fearful, you're never going to get the truth, and you're never going to get the right communication about whatever you're trying to do. So, so for me, those are the negatives. You can probably think of a load more, but I just wanted to write out, I was thinking about that, and I don't know what's come to mind, but what you said around the positions is really important. And being able to decharge the room so people can be honest and are able to challenge you and not feel afraid of challenging you in the right way. I think that engenders trust in the room.
Absolutely. Do you remember? I think we've talked about it on the past before, actually. But the whole thing we did with you, Joe, where we did a bit of prep around you going into a meeting room where you were worried how people might react to stuff, and I almost got you to swear in work.
Yeah, I remember you said that. That was
but
the
we
jacket
compromised. That's exactly it.
The jacket thing, wasn't it? And in fact, I still use that a little bit.
Oh, really?
Even today, I went into the training room and I actually took off I just took off all my, because I wear a suit. It's just one of my things I do.
Hold on, you just said I took off all of my. I'm not sure I like where this story's going.
It's just your mind. What are we going to do with him, Ryan? What are we going to do with him? I tell you, I don't know what I'm going to do with him. But yeah, I took off my jacket and I put it and I hung it up because it's like a coat hanger. So I hang it up and I just sat there. I had the door open because I was very mindful about having the door open. So as they came in the room, I was positioned myself so they could see me as soon as they came in the room. And I had some music playing. So it sort of created a relaxed environment as soon as they came in. So I'm very conscious about trying to create the right environment and, as they might say, ambience, I suppose, if I can. And it was a place we were off-site as well. So it's usually different to where we were. So it was just important for me to generate, as soon as they come in feeling relaxed, because the thing I'm doing, because they have to deliver something, is trying to make them feel relaxed before they deliver it, deliver their training session. So it's just trying to create that environment of trust. So it doesn't matter if you get it wrong, it's okay, or we're going to learn together. So it's that sort of thing, really. So it goes on the other end of on the other thing of the positives. So again, it's about, for me, as I said before, it's about intention, wanting the best for them, support. And so it's really the opposites of the negatives, really, and wanting them to personally grow. And for me, I think this all comes down to your own self-awareness and what you said, Lee. Take bits and pieces from other people. In fact, I'd even encourage you to go on YouTube and look for speakers on YouTube and see how they speak. Look at Steve Jobs, how he spoke. All these different people are really great communicators. You can take bits and pieces from them and go, I really like the way they did that. And that's how you can build up things. I mean, Steve Jobs was fantastic at how he communicated the way he did his things. And it's loads of, motivational speakers. If you watch some of these guys, they're just very, very good at getting, I think, the emotion across and the intention. And I think
that's what it's about, isn't it? I think you're right. That, when someone's talking about something, until they're talking from the heart, it strikes people a lot more. In fact, I've just realised that I very rarely, if ever, give a plug for people going over and watching videos on TED Talks.
Go on then.
Which I'm just thinking, I don't know why we don't do that more, because it's a fantastic resource for this sort of stuff. So for people who don't know, it's like a huge, worldwide now kind of, it's not even a conference circuit. So there's a big one in Canada every year that costs a lot of money to go to, and lots of local ones everywhere. They do one just up the road. In fact, we went to one a couple of years ago, didn't we, Joe?
Yeah, it's good.
Which is really good. So people come on, they give 10, 15-minute talks, and it's about technology or inspiration or art, or they get people to come on and just give these 10, 15-minute talks. There's a website and there's an app with all of it, loads and loads, like hundreds if not thousands of videos on there to watch. And actually some of the talkers come on and they talk about this. They come on and they talk about communication and the skills to do it. And I just think, just jumped in my head when you said YouTube, Joe, as another resource that's really good for people to go on and watch communication and then actually see fantastic presentations from people breaking down how to give a presentation.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? Yeah, I would agree.
And that's where I get a lot of stuff like my 3-story arc thing I talk about, the whole beginning, middle, and end. And that's how every book and film and everything or ever is. And I think that came from a TED Talk video that I saw.
It's amazing, isn't it? And this stuff, and they probably heard it from someone else.
Exactly, yeah.
Like standing on the shoulder of giants, isn't it? But it's
and
beautiful.
Put their own spin on it. And then I put my own spin on it when I tell the story. Not my Men in Black thing. I quote a film. I don't even quote the film accurately anymore.
It's brilliant.
But it still kind of gets a message across, and that's what matters.
Yeah, I love it. And a lot of people, when you do the TED Talks, in fact, I think Simon Sinek blew up on TED Talks. And he, gave a talk. He's got millions of views, absolutely crazy millions of views. But that's where people hone their craft. That's where, they started off, talking to 2, 3 people, then 10, then 20, and as they get better, they speak to more people, and that's how they hone their craft. And they didn't always get it right. They learned their process.
Yeah,
Having the
that's on my
fundamentals.
bucket list. That is.
What's the bucket list? What was
Doing
it?
a TED talk.
Oh yeah, you could have done that locally.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I might look into it, but it's definitely on my list of things I want to achieve. Speaking of TED Talks and looking at the website, whilst you have got your internet browser open, you can also put in inspirationnation.org.uk, take you to our website, click the shop link on there. There's loads of fantastic merchandise. Have we all got our mugs to hand, guys?
Yes.
Can we do a little? I enjoyed this last week. Can we do the little mug shot on the screen?
Yeah, doing it now.
Mug shot.
I'm going to presume that means you're doing it, Ryan, and it looks great right now. And I'm done with that now. So you can get your mug, you can get your hoodies. We're wearing hoodies. Joe, you got one on?
Yep, and I've got my
Inspiration Nation T-shirt, stickers, hoodies, leggings. If you want some Inspiration Nation leggings, of course, my favourite, the tote bag, is on there now as well. Really appreciate if you could show your support for us, help with keeping the show going. Inspirationnation.org.uk.
Wonderful. So, Ron, go on.
Oh, sorry. No. I was going to mention something else, but you're right. Let's speak to Ryan, because I've done a Joe on this show and done a lot of talking.
What was the question?
I don't know. I just cut Joe off. I think I've ruined the whole pace of everything. It's gone awry, everyone.
That's so funny.
Hold on, let's go back. Let's go out the segue again. Inspirationnation.org.uk.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Ryan, what are your thoughts now? Like listening to all that, what's your overview? What's your just initial response, your gut feel, and all that?
Seamless.
I feel as though I've learned a lot. Really, I feel as though I've had my own personal TED talk on the subject to them from the pair of you. Really, I just think that, Joe, you talk a lot about training at work. So you delivering communications is like a daily occurrence, but it's questionably yours is just as important as somebody as in Lee's role, because you're teaching people to teach people. So what you tell people is paramount to how they can kind of communicate themselves, because if you communicate wrong, that means that trainer could then go away and communicate wrong as well, and then before you know it, you've snowballed, and a lot of bad things are happening, if you like. Whereas again, on the flip side, Lee works in a different kind of role, and him providing communication has the same effect but from a different place. And I think knowing that the pair of you are kind of doing the same but not similar kind of things to get communications across just shows that obviously it works, and there's something to pay attention to.
Excellent, like that, yeah. And that's the thing, it is really what you glean from it. And when you're speaking, actually, one of the things that I think is massive from especially where my point of view is when I'm sending people out, is the cultural impact that people have, and the cultural impact that leaders and people who train people that can set a whole culture alight in terms of, in a negative way or a positive way. And so always say to the trainers in the room that you are creating an experience for people. I always say they should remember that, like today, I want them to have an experience that then they go out and they can remember this. When they go into their training, they go and go, oh, remember that session. This is what we talked about. And they can draw on that to give them confidence when they go and do their own sessions, but also in help build the culture of the business in a way that, people matter and looking after people. So you can build a lot of culture that way. And I suspect, Lee, that's similar to what you're doing in each of your conversations, that you're building the culture, you're supporting the culture with each of those conversations, when people can have those conversations. So by you sort of saying, hey, I don't want to sit at the head of the table, you're saying, look, I'm open for you to challenge. I'm open for you to, to talk to me about this. And so it's a really important piece of work, really. And you do have to be mindful, definitely. And it's just an important thing to bear in mind. But what I found works is just really being authentic and honest as you can with people, and showing them that you are a human being, right? And you want to, a human being is down at the level is about connection. and people want to feel that they can be trusted. That you can trust you, and there's a safety there for them. And so that's what I try and bring into rooms with people, so they feel that they are listened to, looked after, and that they can make an error and a mistake, and I'll be there to support them. And that for me is one of the vital things, and that's what hopefully people take away. But yeah. Lee, what are your thoughts?
And I agree with all of that. And it is like you said, and it's always in my mind in everything I do. It is about the culture and the tone, and it's that whole leading by example thing. Because when you've got people in an enclosed environment like that, and it's you've got one-on-one time, you can really start to set the tone for how you are and set the tone in the room, and hope that comes out of that room as well. And I think all of that is just really, really important. And like you said, Joe, you want to give people that reassurance that it's okay to make a mistake, because that will stick with them. Whereas actually, if it wasn't done well and you were doing the fear thing and you were getting to comply out of fear, that's also what they take away from the room. And if everyone goes out with that, that's creating a whole culture of fear, which it's not what gets the best results. It's not productive, and it's not a harmonious kind of environment. And it from those little things that in your consciousness, it really can send it off in two different directions, like you said, depending on the positive or the negative.
Yeah.
There's another little technique I was going to throw in, but then I ruined it because I tried to look up some funny memes of this word and broke my whole internet earlier.
You're multitasking again, Lee. You're not doing that again.
No, well, not now, but earlier on. Do you remember what this word was?
I've come off the page now.
Chunking. Chunking was the
word.
Yeah,
chunking. I've got it here, actually.
Oh, have you? What, on the screen, not on your notes?
No, just as chunking.
Yeah.
Was going for a meme, going to talk about this.
And then the next thing is, Lee, I think your internet might be broken.
Oh, yes.
So, anyway, so this, again, it's another... An NLP, I think, is funny. I'm going to say NLP is a framing device in that it's just a point of reference for a technique. I don't think they're necessarily exclusive to NLP. And then framing device is an NLP technique in itself. So I do live and breathe it quite a lot. But chunking is a communication thing. So back to what you said about that one-on-one thing and not knowing what's going on. Sometimes what you need to do is draw information out of people to be able to understand them, to get a message across. And chunking is a technique for that. So it's a questioning technique. And the way they refer it to is you chunk down in a conversation, or you chunk up, or you chunk sideways. So if you're chunking down, it's where you ask a question on the subject that then leads to another question on the same subject. So you go down a layer, and another question on the same subject. So you go down a layer, and hopefully you drill down far enough to either find out what you need to find out, or that, you've helped. If you're doing a coaching thing, as you know, Joe, and you'll know, Ryan, from stuff you've done, you don't coach people by telling them. You coach them by leading them in the right direction and getting them there. And you might have questioned them to where you need it to go to, or you might just hit a brick wall, in which case you chunk all the way back up to the top level with your open speculative question, or you might chunk sideways into a different question thread, and then chunk down again. And in your head, it's just having that view of, you're asking a question to ask a question to ask a question. You must exhaust that, and then you go back. You start off with very open questions, and then you get more specific as you're getting closer to where you want to get to. Which I think, just on my head, that always goes. I always do this when I talk about these things with people, because again, it's a really good technique to have crystallized in your head to help lead conversations in the right way. And again, under that same thing, it's how you're actually driving the message in the right direction.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's my last little tidbit for the day.
I like that. The reason I like that is because I think I do that, but I didn't know it's called chunking.
This is where it's a framing thing. So that is it's covered in lots of ways. It's a thing people do without even thinking about it. It's the way my brain works. I like having what I call tools. So it's a concept, and it's kind of, because I'm kinesthetic, it's something I can visualize in my head as a technique. But you don't have to see it like that, and that's probably explained in a million different ways from a million different people, but being largely the same technique.
Yeah, I like it. I use that when people have a challenge in the room. Like if sometimes I don't agree with that, I'll use it then to find out what the root cause of that challenge is.
You start off with like, well, why don't you disagree? And they'll tell you, and you've got, okay, but about that, and down in that way.
Yeah. So what
and
is
that
it?
why is that top level question because it's very open. Then you know you kind of pinpoint it. No, that's it. So like you said, you're exactly doing it, but just without it being wrapped up in a bow with a name on it.
But I like the bow with the name on it. Now I can call it chunking. And when you were saying it,
I just think it's quite a funny word as well.
Yeah. Do you know what? When you kept saying chunking, I was starting to laugh. Chunking sideways, chunking downwards, chunking upwards, the whole chunking phenomenon. It was chunk away, right? It was interesting. I started smiling.
Chunks away. That feels like another T-shirt.
Chunks away. Oh yeah, chunking. Oh no, the more I say it, the more weirder it's getting.
It stopped sounding like a word now.
Yeah. I think it's. Oh, sorry. I think I've just gone. That's not right.
Joe, we're getting some more comedy.
Oh dear. Oh dear. I just thought something else. Oh, Leon disappeared again. Have you?
I think I'm still here. Am I
Oh,
still
you're here.
Yeah,
Oh, I
Still
thought you
here.
cut off. What do you
Lee
think?
is still in the room.
Do you know what? Oh, I've gone off total subject now, but about communication. Lee, before we came on the podcast, Lee played a little clip of me singing the Baby Yoda thing, and because I didn't believe the last episode, I didn't believe I did sing it, but I did actually sing it.
That is in episode 42. People, if you want to go back and have a listen in the archive.
Well, I'll give you another burst. Baby
But particularly-
Yoda.
Oh no, Ryan,
Baby
can you cut that off?
Yoda.
Can we? Somebody end. Somebody end.
So I do feel that on our new schedule, so as people know from the video, if they're watching it,
Yeah.
YouTube, the Inspiration Nation podcast, we are in our respective homes on our new recording cycle. So we're doing this a lot later in the day than we normally do. So I feel there's a bit of, Joe, are you up past your bedtime?
I'm getting near my bedtime.
Yeah, I think I can tell.
So are
I can
you,
tell.
Lee. Don't play. Don't play that.
Oh,
card.
I'm well gone. I should be in bed by now. So is it about, are we rambling now and it's up the show?
Well, I think it's important because, like, I really didn't get much sleep last night at all. I really didn't. I was up at 3. I came down. I had to go back. I came down. I had to get a glass of water. Went back, and I kept waking up. I could not sleep. It was crazy. So I think that's probably a bit of an effect of that. I think it is.
It's good. It's added an extra layer of comedy to the show. I'm enjoying it.
Please don't. I've started to think of songs again.
Thank you for listening to the Sleep Deprived podcast. You can catch us on social media platforms. Listen to IN, listen TOIN. We appreciate any interactions there, comments, likes, shares, follows. We appreciate it all. Please, if you think we warrant it on your whatever device you're listening to, leave us a review, leave some comments, hit that 5-star button, hit that subscribe button. Get this as soon as it comes out every week. YouTube, the Inspiration Nation podcast. Again, subscribe on there. Lots of good stuff. Joe, what's your YouTube channel on there?
Jane Coaching Technology.
Jane Coaching Technology. There's another section of videos on there. Joe's daily videos. Joe's, what do you call them? Your long form videos?
Well, they're just videos, yeah. They're just not.
They're just videos. I was trying to be technical. They're just.
That's fine. Long form's fine. They are longer form, but I'm trying to do more longer form. Yeah.
Okay. Joe's videos are on Joe's Video Tube.
Video tube.
I love that. That's a new platform, the Video Tube. We're not on that one though, are we? Video
No, it's
Tube.
VHS based. What we're going to do is we're going to send out a video.
Lee, is that you again dropping out?
I
Have you
hope
gone,
not.
Lee?
Am I back?
You're back. Is your internet dropping out?
I think it is. Technology is awful, isn't it? Right, shall we sign us off because we are just gone into complete rambling territory now.
Okay, all right. You sign us off, Lee.
Thanks again for the support, everyone. We'll see you next week. 3, 2, 1.
Inspiration Nation. Catch you guys later.
Later.